Welcome to the Future of What? I'm your host, Portia Sabin, president of the independent record label Kill Rock Stars. As we all know, the music industry has become a harder and harder place for people to make a living, especially musicians. But one of the hardest things about being a musician is that it's one of those jobs in our culture that doesn't come with health insurance, a 401k, or a safety net of any kind. In 1989, the National Academy of Recording Arts and Sciences stepped into this gap by creating the MusiCares Foundation. NARAS is also known as the Recording Academy, or more generally, as the people who bring us the Grammy Awards. We're pleased to be able to speak today with the president of NARAS, Neil Portnow. Neil, thanks for joining us on The Future of What?
My pleasure. Happy New Year, and nice to speak with you as well.
Absolutely. So can you please start by telling us why the MusiCares Foundation was created and what it does?
Well, MusiCares was created almost 25 years ago because we had found actually an interesting story. There was a clarinet jazz player named Woody Herman, very famous, very successful in terms of a great reputation, great career, and he had passed away, and the family did not have the financial wherewithal to take care of his funeral, which was really a staggering thought and piece of information. And so it really resonated with the Academy at that point and started us to be thinking about, well, how does that happen? And what do people like that do? And what happens even in a bigger situation where somebody has a financial need, a medical need, et cetera, et cetera. So we established MusiCares in 1989 to provide a safety net of support for members of the music industry in those times of financial, medical, and personal hardship.
So in 2002, the Academy acquired the Musicians Assistance Program. Can you tell us about how that's different?
Sure. Musicians Assistance Program, which is known as MAP. This is a charity that was founded in 1966 by a terrific guy by the name of Buddy Arnold. Buddy was a jazz musician for most of his career, and Buddy had his own personal issues and demons with addiction and managed to pull himself through that and fully recovered and decided to spend the rest of his career in helping other musicians and music people who had befallen that same terrible scourge of addiction and substance abuse. So he started this program, which was relatively small, but had a great impact in the music community. And when I started here at the Academy in 2002, I thought it would be terrific for us to combine forces, 2 + 2 = 5. Since we do similar kinds of work, let's try to do this together. And so in 2004, we formed the MusiCares MAP Fund, which was a merger of MAP with MusiCares, the portion of MusiCares that did substance abuse and addiction recovery. And we've continued to provide access to those services to music people in need ever since then.
So what kinds of things does MusiCare Foundation cover?
Well, we cover all kinds of things. It could be, very simple, where let's say you're a musician and you've broken your foot and you can't go to work. You can't make the gig. And what are you going to do? Most musicians are independent contractors. They don't have insurance. They don't have regular pay situations. So you can come to MusiCares. It's confidential. It's anonymous. Nobody knows about this, so there's no embarrassing elements about it. And we could take care of your financial needs while your ankle is healing. That would be one idea. Of course, the substance abuse and addiction recovery is the far other end of the spectrum, where in fact we actually are saving lives, where we will step in and do whatever is necessary, whether it be interventions, placing people in situations where they can get rehabilitation and back on their feet and survive that terrible chronic disease of addiction.
So if there's a musician listening to this show today who needs help, how do they get connected with MusiCares?
It's very simple. We have a website, which is musicares.org. We have a page on that website, which is called who we are and contact information, and that will provide toll-free phone numbers to actually phone in, contact our staff, talk about your issues, and get us involved so that we can be helpful. And we encourage and hope that people do that to the extent that they have a need. That's what we're there for.
And is anyone ineligible, or is everybody eligible for this program?
The guidelines are pretty broad for eligibility. It's basically 5 years of work in the industry. In other words, we're talking about people who genuinely are engaged in the music industry. So this could be non-consecutive years. It could be, we also acknowledge credits on 6 records or CDs or videos. And the guidelines apply to any professional who works in the music industry, whether it's you're a bus driver or you're an engineer, songwriters, musicians, production crew, managers, label employees, etc.
Wow, that's really far-reaching. That's terrific to know.
It is. We're very proud of it, by the way.
Yeah, you should be. So can you share with us any particular success stories that you know about?
Well, the success stories are realized really on a daily basis. When you think about this past year, for example, we have touched over 13,000 music people in the last year, and each one of those individuals had a unique situation that we addressed. That said, as I indicated a little earlier, this is a confidential service. So we make sure that people who receive the service know that it is confidential and stays with us. So therefore, we don't share specific stories on a regular basis unless we have permission from a client directly. But many of the clients go on to talk about this themselves on their own websites and so on and so forth. The other piece of information I think is important here is that in the last year, we reached a milestone of the charity providing the largest amount of financial aid in our history, which was over $4.5 million, and that includes $1.2 million specifically in addiction recovery aid.
Oh, wow. That's fantastic. And you served over 13,000 people?
Correct.
Wow. Those are great statistics.
Thanks. We're very proud of it.
So how has the Affordable Care Act changed the landscape for musicians these days?
Well, many more individuals have access to affordable health care because of that, and it allows us to focus on basic living expenses or other needs when a music person's facing a major medical situation. So that's the good news, although even with access to insurance, premiums and copays can be a bit of a struggle for our clients to cover, and we offer assistance in that realm as well. And we also offer assistance in sort of navigating what that's all about in terms of the healthcare system and the details of that. We actually do regular seminars and give information to our folks who want to help figure out how they qualify, what they can do, and we help them to understand all of that infrastructure.
I often see concerts being given by musicians where it says that it's a benefit for MusiCares. So, all the money made at the door or a portion made at the door will go to MusiCares. And I know that you guys have a gala fundraiser every year during Grammys week, which is your Person of the Year, right? MusiCare Person of the Year.
Correct. So, the big night, the MusiCares Person of the Year tribute, it's held 2 nights before the Grammy Awards. And the idea is we honor an artist and we raise funds for MusiCares programs. We honor iconic artists who've made great contributions to music, but who are also philanthropic themselves, which sort of defines a Person of the Year. And it's our biggest night. Last year when we honored Bob Dylan, we raised in excess of $7 million for the charity that night. This year, it's the 26th anniversary, and our MusiCares Person of the Year is going to be honoring the incredible Lionel Richie for his career-spanning work in music, but also his charitable work. So we expect, well, let's put it this way, Lionel's hoping to break that record. He's a competitive guy, and he's talking about, come on, let's make even more for the charity than we ever have. So knowing him and how dedicated he is, and knowing the kind of a night that it's become within the industry, wouldn't surprise me if we reach that milestone, and we hope so. Beyond that, there are many, many different events and activities, and just general contributions that come in, and it's very simple. That same website, musicares.org, you can check in on that at any time, and you'll find the details in order to make a contribution, which of course we would always welcome and greatly appreciate.
Neil Portnow is the president of NARAS, that's the National Academy of Recording Arts and Sciences, otherwise known as the people who bring us the Grammys. Neil, thank you so much for everything that you do and for being on The Future of What?
Well, thanks, Portia, and we appreciate the coverage and the fact that you give us another platform, another way to get to people so they understand the value of this wonderful organization. And we look forward to seeing you Grammy Week, and wish everybody a happy New Year, and thanks for your support for MusiCares.
Thanks, Neil. Take care. That was Mind Whole by Numbers. If you're enjoying this program, please consider becoming a subscriber on Bandcamp. Just go to thefutureofwhat.bandcamp.com. To find out what's coming up next, follow us on Twitter at KRSFOW. Now back to the show. MusiCares and MAP both operate with complete confidentiality for their clients. It speaks well of both programs, therefore, that some of the people who've benefited from their services are willing to speak with us today. Michael Farr is a former musician and touring photographer. He has benefited from the MusiCares Foundation, and he joins us today. Michael, thanks for coming on The Future of What?
Hello, you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
So tell us how MusiCares helped you. Tell us your story.
Okay. Yeah, my story is I was in many bands here in Los Angeles, California, where I'm from. I grew up in LA and was, super interested. Music was always kind of my master, so to speak, and I really, really thought that in some ways I would want to be in the music industry, and I didn't know which. And so I played in bands and got involved in photography, went to Art Center and got a degree in photography, and started touring with bands and shooting pictures, and found that to be great. And then, the whole kind of aspect of sex, drugs, and rock and roll kind of came true for me. And the drug part actually became a real problem for me. And so addiction kind of just really got a hold of me, and, it just really became the life challenge that, I experienced. We all had challenges, and that one was mine. And it kind of just took me to some pretty bad places. And I was introduced to MusiCares because I was at a crossroads, and they offered to help me.
That's fantastic. And how many years ago was that?
That was over 10 years ago. And what had happened was my addiction had led me into incarceration. And I had I had been released from prison, and I had literally nowhere to go. And I was sober at the time, and I had resigned myself to recovery. I had had some experience in the recovery process prior to a relapse, and I just was I was just really bewildered, and I had literally no place to go. I went to a donut shop that was across the street from where I was released, and I was wearing some other inmate's clothing, and I had zero money, and the guy, I guess, was used to that scene coming towards him, and very sweet gentleman, and he said, I'll give you some donuts, and I'll give you enough money to make a phone call, will that help? And I said, sure. And I called, I had an experience with a guy named Harold Owens at MusiCares. Prior to that, he was just a gentleman on a phone. I never met him. I just knew him by telephone, and he was the sweetest guy, and he just had this calm demeanor, but he also knew what I was going through. He had a similar experience as me and had conquered it, and I couldn't get him out of my head, and I just thought, man, I'm going to call this guy, Harold. And, I had kept in contact with him for some reason. It was just a weird thing, and I liked him, and I didn't know him, but I wanted to talk to him, and there were occasions where, during my relapse, life was okay, and I would call him, and life was bad, and I would call him, and he kind of was just walking hand in hand with me in a really kind of strange manner. And so I did. I called him, I used that money and gave him a call, and he was happy to hear from me and asked me a few pertinent questions, basically, am I willing to do what it takes to get sober again? And I said, yes, I was. And he helped me. He got me into a sober living that night, actually. He asked me if I could get to L.A. I was in Ventura at the time. And I said, I'll do anything it takes, and got to Los Angeles. He told me to go to a meeting, a 12-step meeting, and I did that. And then he said, I got you a bed at this place in L.A., and they took care of me. They paid my rent for some time so I could get, my feet under me and, kind of shake off being incarcerated and also, just kind of starting a whole new life. And that's actually, they did that for me, and I promised that I would somehow return that to them, and been fortunate enough to be able to do them and represent them in the way that I do now.
How do you represent them now? Tell us about that.
Yeah, so, during the course of my recovery, I started working in a production format. I needed to kind of put the guitar down and the camera down. It was sort of driven by ego, and that was something that was problematic for me in my recovery. I couldn't kind of access that right away. I needed to just walk away from it and let it come back. So I started working in production because I still loved music, and I met a few people that were sober who were working in certain festivals and stuff. I started working for Coachella, and then started hosting meetings backstage with MusiCares at Coachella. We have a VIP safe harbor room and for musicians and crew. And that evolved into, so I was hosting meetings there every summer during show days, and it was great. We had really good turnouts, and it's been getting more and more popular as the years go on. I've been with the Coachella Festival now. This will be my 9th year this year. And anyway, what happened was that evolved into Kevin Lyman, who runs the band's Warped Tour. He had noticed that he needed, organically, there was meetings happening on his tour, and he thought it would be a good idea to just make it a real thing. So he called MusiCares and said, hey, I'd like to start a meeting out here. I'd like to get somebody who's, used to touring and good with, the young people, and also kind of has, who would be willing to kind of get his ass kicked out on the road and be a sober companion, be kind of a sober counselor on the tour for people who are sober and want to stay that way, and also for people who, he would see a lot of people who had problems and nowhere to go. So my name got thrown in that hat, and I became the winner, so to speak. And I've been doing that now for 6 years. So I go out on the road, and I represent MusiCares, and I tell the kids what it's about and what we do. And then I also have meetings every night of the tour, and I'm available for people who have, all kinds of different addiction problems. It's not just drugs and alcohol. It turns out there's a lot of other things going on that relate to the process that I've gone through to kind of find who I am and find some self-love and stop the self-hate, the destruction of myself. And a lot of kids have that going on, whether they're cutters or whether they're using drugs or whether they're, eating problems or sex addictions or whatever. It kind of just goes across the board. And it's amazing. I've found, somehow this curse that I had prior to getting sober turned into a blessing and an asset. So I'm able to help people, and I do that through MusiCares, and it's really, really amazing.
Michael, that's so inspirational. It's such a beautiful story. I'm so grateful that you shared it with us.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate that.
I'm glad that I got to talk to you today. Thank you so much. Thanks for what you do and keep doing. And yeah, I love it. I love it, man.
Yeah, it's good. It's good to have hope. And I know that if I can do it, if I can change my life, which was basically just about to be gone, anybody can. I'm not special. I'm not exceptional in any way other than I just know it's possible. And, I think that's a message that people need to hear, is that they're not alone, and there's people that will love them until they learn to love themselves, So that's what I try to do.
Fantastic. Well, thank you. I appreciate your time so much.
Yeah, I appreciate you too. Thanks a lot.
All right. Thanks for coming on The Future of What.
You're welcome.
You're listening to The Future of What. If you're enjoying this program, like us on Facebook and become a subscriber at thefutureofwhat.bandcamp.com. And thanks. Jennifer Witt is the Artist Relations and Hospitality Coordinator with the Wanderlust Festival Brands. Jennifer, welcome to The Future of What.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, thanks for being here, and thanks for sharing your story with us. Would you like to just dive right in and tell us how MusiCares helped you?
Yeah, absolutely. I wasn't even aware that MusiCares kind of existed until, because I before I got onto Wanderlust, I worked freelancing for a lot of festivals. So while I was working Coachella, I learned about MusiCares because they were running the sober meetings backstage. And I had just recently started on my path of sobriety, and it was a tremendous resource to me. And then as I became more familiar with the people that worked with MusiCares, I started to learn the other services that they provided for people in the music industry. So that's how I became familiar with MusiCares.
And what did they do for you?
Oh my gosh, it saved my mouth. I had an accident and broke a tooth, and they put on half of a fake tooth. So for all of my life, I've had half of a fake tooth. And I guess about 2 years ago, I started getting infections in my gums, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. I've never had a cavity. I'm kind of anal about dental hygiene. So I went to a dentist, and they said, well, what's happening is where that initial fracture was, it's kind of refracturing. The cement is breaking open. So bacteria is getting inside of it, and you're getting, this is a really sexy story, isn't it? And, you're getting these infections in your gums. And here's how here's what we need to do. We need to do a root canal and this and that and the other. And I was uninsured at the time. So, a root canal is thousands of dollars. I decided to go to dental schools. And for about a year, what I kept doing, which I do not recommend to anyone, I think I put myself through a lot more suffering than was necessary, but I kept going in and getting partial root canals. And then they would say, okay, come back and get it completed. But I never had the money to do that at the time. So then I would just wait until it would get reinfected again. I would go back in, I was going to have to do this again, and that happened 3 times. And finally, a friend of mine who works with MusiCares said, why don't you just apply and see if they can help you out? And I went through the application, and they did. They gave me the money to actually get the entire thing completed and, to get all the other necessary dental work done as well. And my mouth has been very happy since June.
Wow. So this is recent. This is a recent story.
Very recent. Yeah, very
gosh.
recent.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's fantastic. That's incredible. And that's a really good story for our listeners to hear because, we just spoke to Michael Farr, who you may know from the backstage sober meetings because he runs those on Warped Tour and also at Coachella. So, he covered the sort of addiction portion, which is more what you think when you think, rock and roll and the lifestyle and everything. But the truth is exactly like your situation. I mean, everybody has these crazy things happen to them. You just never know.
It's such a tremendous resource because MusiCares understands that there are things that people in the industry run up against, and not having insurance is kind of when you're freelancing a lot, even if you're a musician or working production or any kind of aspect of it, you run up against these things, and recovery is a tremendous resource, but there are also other things that, people kind of need help with, and they address that as well, which is a really beautiful thing about the organization. The more I learn about MusiCares, the more fascinated I am with the work that they do.
Yeah, it's really impressive to me too. And I feel like they do so much of it under the radar. People don't know so much about it, which is why we're doing this radio show. We want to try to increase the visibility a little bit, so that maybe some people listening will be like, oh, hey, I have, a tooth that's rotting out of my head.
Oh, man.
Maybe I could get some help.
This is my moment of fame. This is what I'm going to be known as.
Right, the non-sexy version of making your way to fame, right?
Right.
But if you can help somebody else, then it's totally worth it.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Oh my gosh. Jennifer, do you want to say anything else about your experience or MusiCares?
I guess I'm really grateful that they are in existence and that they, are kind of so selflessly doing what they do to help people. It really, especially in these times, at least I can only speak for myself, but I can look around at what's happening on the planet and get rather cynical and start to feel rather powerless and kind of hopeless. And then those small but very significant actions that people do in service kind of puts things back into perspective, and you remember that there is love and graciousness out there and people really do care. So I just want to say thank you to MusiCares because it kind of reopened my mind and my eyes and my heart to that.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story with us and for being on The Future of What?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
That was Vibrational Match by Marnie Stern. Andrew Jocelyn is a composer, orchestrator, and violinist who lives in Seattle, and he joins us on the phone now. Andrew, welcome to The Future of What?
Thank you so much for having me, Portia.
So today we're talking about MusiCares and MAP and all the great stuff that they do, and I know that they have helped you out. So can you share your story with us?
Yeah, absolutely. So a little bit more background about me. So yes, composer, arranger, and violinist, but I do a lot of scoring work for different artists as well. And I mean, just to name a few, I worked with Mark Lanigan, Macklemore, and Judy Collins, and I'm also on the board for the Pacific Northwest Grammy chapter. And my relationship with MusiCares, for the longest time, I didn't really understand the program or I didn't know much about it. But at the beginning of 2015, my apartment burned down while I was away down in California visiting my sister in San Rafael. And it was a very particularly traumatic and devastating fire just because it's like my girlfriend and I at the time, but we were both independent musicians, so taking time off work means you're not getting paid. And especially when you're dealing with something that devastating, we lost albums that, you sell independently. I had lost scores of music that I can't replace just because it was all handwritten and, old recordings and equipment. And, the one thing that's difficult is a lot of musicians they don't realize with insurance that you have to insure your musical instruments and your musical gear separately away from renter's insurance.
Oh.
Renter's insurance refuses to cover anything that's even remotely business related.
I did not know that. That's good that you're telling us that.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that I've learned in the process of that. So I have my own music studio where I do like my scoring and stuff. So it was kind of like a no-brainer to, insure all that equipment. But when the fire happened, so lost everything and also lost my cat, which was, I think that was like the emotional fallout that was just like really hard to deal with. And with all of that, literally, I was dealing with insurance attorneys because it was a situation where it was essentially negligence on behalf of the landlord that the fire happened.
Oh, wow.
So in that situation, I'm dealing with attorneys, I'm dealing with so many things, and I'm having to take time off from work, and essentially my one way of making money, being a musician, to handle, all the essentially the nuclear fallout from this fire.
Right.
So the thing that was incredible is, one of my fellow board members with the Grammy Foundation was insistent that I talk to MusiCares. And, for a while I was just like, no, I got to handle this. Like it's fine. I'm going to let the insurance kind of run its process and do what it's supposed to do, which actually turned out to be one of the most disappointing things is just insurance. Like I said, they wouldn't cover a lot of musical equipment. Another thing with insurance, especially with renter's insurance, is the coverage doesn't cover the property. It covers all the services in reclamation of that property. So, for example, like if you have cleaners come in to clean smoke damage of all your books, that comes out of the property coverage. So maybe you have $50,000 worth of property that you can, get back. But if the cost of services is like $40,000, it's like, oh, you're only going to get $10,000 worth of stuff back.
Wow.
So anyway, just the sheer amount of stuff I had to deal with and learn, especially as an independent musician, on top of trying to keep my business going. And I think the thing that was difficult is during that time, I lost out on two very large clients that I was doing orchestral work for their albums, and each were like 10K plus gigs, and I couldn't do them because literally I was handling insurance paperwork, talking to attorneys, and talking to fire inspectors about the fire.
Oh my God.
So I reached out to MusiCares, and I was skeptical at first because I was like, I don't know what they're going to be able to do for me or how they're going to be able to help. So I just kind of just ran with it and was like, well, let's see what they can do. So I called them up, and the great thing is the application process was really quick and easy. And essentially they just want to confirm that you are either a full-time musician or a significant portion of your income is professionally derived from music.
Right.
So, and I obviously fit the bill, and they were able to, essentially, with my whole situation, they were able to cover essentially living costs. They were able to help me rebuild, get just normal food, housewares. I went to Macy's and Target and just Ross to pick up new bed sheets and random stuff, and they're like, okay, just give us your credit card statements and we'll reimburse you for anything that's directly related to you rebuilding your house and rebuilding your home.
Wow.
So, depending on the situation, they'll kind of value it at hey, we can help you with up to this much money. And then, so that was immediately just super helpful. It's oh my God, okay, thank you so much. Because it's all my money was tied up in, trying to figure out where we were living and, all this kind of stuff. So, I mean, it was incredible having that service immediately available, especially to musicians where it's when you're independent, there's no real, benefits on the side other than getting free tickets to shows, and you can, you can tour do really cool stuff. But in terms of just job security or actual job benefits, it's you're not getting health benefits and stuff unless you're paying out of pocket for it.
Right.
So anyway, having a service like MusiCares readily available was completely invaluable. And then I think after that, so that was the initial help that MusiCares really gave me. But I think the real thing that helped me this last year was, it was a lot of processing, to deal with that loss, and just as an independent musician, just, you're dealing with so many topsy-turvy, things just in regards to money as a freelancer, that, having 3 months of not working because I'm trying to deal with insurance and stuff was really hard. So they actually set me up with a therapist to kind of help talk me through stuff, to kind of help process everything I was dealing with. And they covered all of it.
Wow.
Every single session that I went to, like, I think that alone, like, I mean, that just, I think it just astounded me that, like, they literally, I would just go and MusiCares was like, yep, that's totally fine. We'll just pick up the bill. We got you. Whatever you need to do to get back on your feet, like mentally, physically, and financially, we got you. So
that is awesome.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and since then I've just been an absolute advocate for MusiCares because there's no, like, you don't have to be a Grammy member. You just have to be a musician. So it's like there's been friends of mine that have gotten in car accidents and they can't play anymore, or there's this, or there's so many people that over the course of the last year that they've gotten into pretty bad situations, and I just immediately, like, hey, here's the number for MusiCares. Just give them a call. Like, you have nothing to lose. Like, I never want to sound like it always kind of sounds kind of creepy when you're like, oh, call this service. But it's like, honestly, it's such a great foundation that it's like, maybe I'm not selling it well enough, but it's just, they're really good people. And that, I mean, I can't thank them enough for how they helped me through my weird year.
That's wonderful. No, I think you're doing a great job of selling them. And, that's what we're doing on this show today is we're really trying to talk to a lot of people who've been helped in several different ways so that musicians out there can understand that, it's not just drug rehab. It's not just if you get sick. There's actually so many things that happen to people that MusiCares can help with.
Right.
So I think your story has been terrific, and thank you so much for sharing it with us.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Andrew Jocelyn is a composer, orchestrator, and a violinist who lives in Seattle. Andrew, thanks so much.
Thank you.
That was Plus 81 by Deerhoof. Scott Patterson is a tour manager, and he joins us today. Thanks for being with us on The Future of What, Scott?
Thanks for having me. I appreciate you asking.
So today we're talking, as you know, about MusiCares and all the work that they've done helping people out. And you have been a recipient of what they do. So we wanted to hear your story.
The short story is I went in and had a physical, my first annual physical. And lo and behold, they came back and told me it took about 3 months after they didn't believe the test results were correct. They had given me a couple rounds of antibiotics. And they thought I had a virus. We had just come off a fantastic work period. I used to do property rentals up in Sundance. We had just played a show. The band had just played. And we were just at the Super Bowl. Me and some friends watching the Super Bowl in Arizona. I felt fantastic. But then those test results came back and they told me I had cancer.
Wow.
So, yeah, I was a little surprised,
Yeah.
So, it was a much longer story. Actually, while we were in Arizona at the Super Bowl, went to a gifting lounge, sat down at one of those aura readers. I was with a bunch of friends, and everybody was having the aura read as we were getting free stuff that we didn't need, of course. And the woman who was running the aura machine, after she tested me, came over and asked me to sit with her. And she's like, listen, how do you feel? Are you okay? I said, no, why are you asking? I feel great. She goes, because your reading came back. Everybody else's was white and blue, and mine came back really dark red. She had really caused her concern. She, at the moment, looking back, she really put the kind of scare into me, but she's like, you're under a lot of stress, or are you having some health problems? I said, no, I'm fine, I'm great, I'm working a lot. But so even then, that woman checking my aura in early February could tell something was wrong. And lo and behold, that's how the process started. And unfortunately, they didn't catch it really soon. If I'd have gone to the doctor a year earlier, it would have been a much more easier process. But that's not what happened. And so I had to embark on this journey of recovery by, going to all you got to get first, second, third opinions when it's kind of in advanced stages, because the treatment stuff can be permanent. Doctors love to say that, hey, I'm going to save your life. But I think we all would agree a quality of life can be almost just as important.
Right.
And that's how it began, and what else would you like to know about it? Because I could talk for hours.
Well, what exactly did MusiCares do for you? When did they step in at that, at what point?
I can be honest, I don't know why I did this, but it saved my life. I started going to all these doctor appointments, and they all started painting, unfortunately, kind of a bleak picture that you're not probably going to survive this more than 3 to 5 years. And you're in trouble, and you're really young. I had prostate cancer. You're really young, but you're what do they call it? You're a high cancer risk. And because of all that, I had to do the second, third opinions. I had to do all this exploring. I went home one day, and I wrote an email. And this was before I got diagnosed positive. And because I didn't know what was going to happen. So I just wrote an email to a bunch of my music friends and buddies and stuff. I just wanted to let them know how much I felt about them, cared about them, and how much I've enjoyed the last couple of years. Because I didn't know how I was going to respond. And I didn't know what was going to happen if I had cancer. I wasn't worried about dying yet. I was just worried about if I was going to fall apart.
Mm-hmm.
And I wrote this email to a bunch of friends, and I just said, hey, I may have cancer, and this is going on, and I want to let you know how much I love you. And because I wrote that, I got this enormous response, and people started talking about it, and people started making recommendations for doctors, and people started reaching out to people, and hey, did you know so-and-so? It's easy. One of my buddies who was in the band Dead Z, who I tour managed, called me and said, hey, Mark McGrath, his best friend from grammar school, had a cancer at Cedars. Can I call McGrath for you? I said, yeah. I had worked with McGrath and toured with McGrath over the years. And that's how it started. And that's how MusiCares became aware of what was happening. So the other side of that is I was working with this amazing group of musicians that play shows. They decided to put on a benefit for me at the Viper. And it's just kind of odd, actually, ended up producing the event and being the tour manager for it at the same time that the event for me. It made it very public.
Right.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. They were like, dude, we'll play the show, but you have to be the tour manager. I was like, oh, okay. Let me produce my own charity event. Sure. And it turned out great. It sold out. And all these amazing musicians came down and played for free. Raised all this money in a silent auction. But, I'm like most Americans, especially then, I'm underinsured. even though I had been successful for a number of years and had money in the bank and had no outstanding debt, and everything was fine. But when it came down to it, I was underinsured because literally 6 months prior, I downgraded my insurance from full coverage to catastrophe.
Oh, wow.
Because I read an article on some money website that's saying at my age, I've survived the childhood diseases. I'm too young for any old man diseases. And more than likely, if I need a doctor, it's from an accident.
Oh, my God.
I'm going to crash my motorcycle. I'm going to get in a car wreck. So doing all those second and third opinions wiped me out. I was averaging 5 doctor appointments a week sometimes. And I had to pay for every single one. When I got into treatment, the chemo, the radiation, the drug program, the surgery, that was paid for my insurance. But all the appointments wasn't. And they were all $350 or $500. And I got lucky because I wrote that email. People started talking about it. You know, it's tough for me, I guess, most people, to ask for help and then have to admit that I'm not okay.
Mm-hmm.
You know, 'cause I was okay for so long. I came from a successful family. I'd always had a good job. I always worked. I always loved working. I've always been in music from 19, since I was 19 years old. Worked at tour managing and concert promoters and producing events. And that's how it started. MusiCares got aware of what I was doing, and they contacted me. And it was a lifesaver because even though I still had a little of my own money, what I was learning was like, hey, you're going to have chemo for 3 months, so you're not going anywhere for 4 months.
Right.
And it wasn't it was, you know, it is, I make my money by working, you know. I don't have a grocery store. I'm selling stuff at night.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
I gotta go to work. And so that was it. There was going to be zero income. And even I needed money. The benefit allowed me to go. I went through treatment for almost 2 years. And the benefit money in MusiCares allowed me to be at home while I was in chemo. Then I went to radiation for 47 trips, to go 5 days on, 2 days off. And all I would do was someone had to drive me 47 times because I would get sick.
Oh, wow.
I couldn't drive a car. Yeah. So, you know, MusiCares, they paid I think 1 or 2 of my doctors directly, you know, and even though I had these great relationships with my doctors, I started going to people every single day and start seeing them and you build relationships with them, but they still want to be paid. They're funny like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So MusiCares stepped in, man, and they wrote these checks directly to my doctors, which even my doctors were like, what? You know, and it was substantial.
Wow.
And it allowed me to go through treatment. Without that, I wouldn't have been, if those guys wouldn't have done that benefit, and MusiCares wouldn't have paid those bills, I wouldn't had the privilege of sitting home for 4 months while I'm in treatment. You know,
Absolutely.
I honestly don't know what I would have done.
That's what makes MusiCares really special. And that's what I think this show is really, everyone we've talked to has a different story. And it's so inspiring to hear because you forget when people get sick, it is the car rides to and from radiation and chemo. It's the little things, you know, it's not just a big lump check or something.
Yeah. You know, it was so simple. I wasn't going grocery shopping, and I had a dog. Thank God I had a dog, but they would come and walk my dog. They wouldn't even talk to me, which was great. They would just let themselves in and look at me and go, you know, good to see you, and walk the dog and come back. Or they would have food delivered to my house.
Oh, wow.
You know? And it was that thing of I sent that email and started talking about it. And, you know, the musicians are amazing people that they are, and many, many other of my friends. They just rallied for me, you know, and because when you don't talk to cancer patients or patients that have had an illness that can be life-threatening and have to go long-term treatment, like a buddy would come give me a ride for chemo, and I would see him a month later, and he goes, how you doing? Everything great? I'm like, dude, I'm still in chemo treatment. You know, he's like, wait a second, I came give you a ride a month ago. I go, yeah, but that's how it is, man. This is 3 months, and then I'm in recovery, you know.
Right.
So you're right. People don't understand it unless you've gone through it. Now, since I've been in remission and been cancer-free for a couple of years, I've done my best to help as many other people as I can. And I go with them to their cancer appointments, and I go with them to treatment, and I talk to them. And I've realized constantly that none of them have gotten the attention and care and caring and service out of people that I've got. None of them had a benefit played for them by a bunch of great rock star musicians. None of them had MusiCares to help them. And it reminds me of like, wow, you really got lucky, dude. You really got lucky, So, without MusiCares, I honestly don't know how it would have played out.
Yeah.
It's kind of, we all know about how the healthcare system works in America and how really non-existing it is. And, it's an unfortunate thing, but more money, better treatment, better service,
Yeah.
I burned through a couple $100K of my own second, third opinions. If I didn't have that money, I couldn't have gone to those appointments because they're all, you arrive, you pay us.
Yeah.
There's no credit. There's no credit.
Yeah.
So that's how, and I try to do whatever I can in return for them as well, whenever I can. Absolutely. Because it really has been, it's a difficult road. It's 2 years, year and 3/4 in treatment, and then another solid year of getting over all the side effects. And, I think even after that, they paid for doctor bills. I think at one time they actually helped me cover my rent.
Wow.
Years later,
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Because it was kind of a double whammy. It happened in 2008, so the economy was crashing. So it was like, okay, so now nothing's worth nothing, and you can't get a job, and you're too sick to go to work, and okay, so.
Wow.
So even years later, it was like, I had a premonition once it was all over. I went to an appointment 2 years later, and they said, yeah, you're cancer-free. You're not cured. Can't tell you cured, but you're cancer-free. Treatment, chemo, radiation, all this drug program take about a year, 2 years to wear off. Your health will gradually come back. I knew that day. I went home by myself. And I had one of those uncontrollable crying, bawling sessions. I knew that day. I go, now it's really going to get bad.
Yeah.
Because I worked 30 days in 2 years. I depleted everything, Those are one of the bigger struggles is the financial stuff of how do you carry on if you don't have a way to make that compensation. So, America could do much better on treating its citizens with health care if every other nation that's industrialized like we are is able to take care of their citizens,
Absolutely.
My 2 cents. Yeah.
I mean, I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah. So other than that small thing of MusiCares helping save my life, and allowing me to, I really don't have anything good to say about them.
Well, Scott Patterson, we're so glad we got a chance to talk to you. Your story is amazing and inspiring, and congratulations. And we're glad you're still around.
Thank you very much.
And that's our show. The music we played today was used by permission. You heard Numbers, Marnie Stern, Deerhoof, and of course, our theme song, Mind Your Own Business by the Delta 5. If you have a question you want answered on the show, please email us at thefutureofwhatshow@gmail.com. Our episodes are archived at killrockstars.com/thefutureofwhat, and you can subscribe to our podcast on Bandcamp. Follow us on Twitter at KRSFOW. Our program was engineered by Brent Asbury at Beta Petrol and is produced by Will Watts and Anna McLean. I'm Portia Sabin, president of Kill Rock Stars. See you next week.